sort of disappeared. Okay, some of this I will whiz through, which was talking about savings through safety, and where we got to was talking about what does safety cost and risk in the modern world. Now, I talked about then and today being much safer, and of course it's not. And I talked about the cost of safety, which was that it was a global issue and not one related to just emerging economies. So we know the cost of injuries, we know the cost of slips, trips, and falls. And in the USA, we know that, for example, there were 642 fatalities in 2019 just from exposure to harmful substances, as an example. So we know the time costs, we know there are fines, we know there are penalties, and we know that even with coronavirus, we still have charges being applied. So this is where I got to with risk in the modern world, and I think we're just about caught up with where I was with the slides. Now, these are some good examples of working unsafely, and each one of those is essentially a near-death experience for the people that are up on those ladders and up on those high places. And humanity really is driven more by the doing than by how to do it safely. And that's driven by national and international standards. And the important one here, which is worth remembering, is this new one, ISO 45001, and section 5.2, if anybody's not read it, which is that safety can no longer be delegated. Even in ISO 9000, it says those who lead the organization must promote risk-based thinking. But in this particular case, it is definitely stated in the 45001 that safety can no longer be delegated. So if I look at Industry 4.0, the new drivers towards Industry 5.0, which is to talk about the interconnected worker. And a quote from the European Commission, really the next step is to place the well-being of the worker at the center of the production process, which is part of what we're going to be discussing through this conference. So a really important statement that we move from Industry 4.0 up to Industry 5.0. And that leads to the question of, are we getting better at working safely? So let's look at that in a little bit of detail. So the reasons for industrial fatalities are fairly common. A third of it tends to be human error, a third of it tends to be slips, trips, and falls, and a third of it is other things. And the core root cause behind these, 60% of accidents happen due to lack of or inadequate control of work. And a poor understanding of the risks involved is the primary factor involved in that. If we knew that we were doing something unsafe, we maybe wouldn't have done it. If we look at Oman in a little bit of detail, then we know that 34% of all the accidents in Oman, at least as of the 22nd of October 2019, 34% vehicle accidents, 26% slips, trips, and falls, and 27% debris, high falls, moving equipment, and sharp objects. The same kind of split between the three different areas. But when people start working, they all knew about the hazards before they started. Article 87 of Omani law states that you have to state all of the hazards and risks and make sure that everybody's protected before they start work. So we're still getting accidents. And best in class really for learning about incidents and accidents is Mr. Musley from PDO. Everything that happens is documented, is put onto the internet, is made available to everybody to look at it, and it really is best in class information, and it's great to be able to see it. But it's a lot of information, and that leads me to think about workload. Now, every day in everybody's work, we have more daily traffic. And more daily traffic, more work, more things happening mean that we end up with more paperwork. And more paperwork leads us to more stress. And more stress, people working harder and not taking the time that they should, leads to more incidents. And really, as we get to that point, we're really talking about a circle of doom, and it affects everybody in every business. And the reason for that is because there are more and more controls being put in place as we discover more risks. But then is more paperwork just stopping the work? And often it doesn't read through to the people doing the work anyway, because they don't get the paperwork, they don't see the paperwork, they don't get the training that others may have got. We're often too busy just to simply keep up. And because we're too busy, it increases our workaround temptation to do things in a faster way. So the question is, do we really learn the lessons from the past? And the answer to that I'm going to give you is a really big one. This is ammonium nitrate, and this is all of the ammonium nitrate explosions since 1921. I picked this as an example because it's pretty much exactly 100 years worth of data. So for 100 years, we know that ammonium nitrate is an incredibly dangerous substance that can go bang if not treated correctly. Well, this is Beirut in August of 2020, another ammonium nitrate explosion. And to answer the question on the Q&A, yes, the recording will be shared afterwards, so you'll be able to look at it again. And when I look at the destruction caused in Beirut, and you look at what the newspaper said, it was somebody else's problem. Someone should have done something about it. Someone should have seen it happening. So why, with all the evidence, 100 years worth of evidence that we can see here, do these things still happen? And really, it's because if we can't find a more intelligent way to manage control of work, we appear to be doomed to risk repeating the sins of the past. And that's true even in Oman. I look at data here, which is a snapshot of safety data that goes from 2013 all the way through the latest data. And in each one of these cases, we still get accidents. Incidents are still happening. So we have to find a way to control it, and by controlling it, generate safety in and of itself and get the savings that come from it. So let's look at digital control of work and what it's about. Well, the key pillars of any plant are the assets of the plant themselves, the plant systems and the technology that drives it, and the people working within it and working safely. And that's the asset performance management triangle in simplest terms. And three core functions make up control of work. And it's really important that you get all three, because we talk about the permit, which is the piece of paper that says what we're doing and how we do the work. There's a risk assessment that goes with it, which is how we look at the risks and make sure that they're addressed safely. And the management of the isolations that are associated with that. And the isolations are making sure that fluid or electrical or other forms of power can't affect the people working in the area. Now, based on that, all three should be equally represented and linked together. Because if they're not, then the information doesn't share correctly and we get unsafe actions taking place. And digital solutions are the easiest way to link these things together so that we get a true control of work solution. And digital systems allow us to move through risk assessment, permit creation, the management of isolations. We can map the areas in which we're doing work. We can create exclusions. We can spot dangerous SIMOPs. And we can make sure that we issue safe permits to the people carrying out the work. So everything then is linked, intuitive to work, in a workflow that is robustly auditable, which is important. It isn't just a set of forms, which is a copy of paperwork. It must always be robustly auditable. And it has to be understandable by everybody, not just the experts. And that's a critical point, because often the experts understand exactly what the risks are, but the people doing the work don't. And that comes down to a mixture of safety, training, learning, and also the methodology by which things are communicated. within Yokogawa RAP, we use an icon-driven system, so it's really easy to see what is going on in terms of the work that's being done, the tools that are being used, and the conditions under which people are working. And that's driven by experience, our own learning, standards, legislation, best practice, and above all, common sense. And what we're looking to do is to really drive cultural safety gains, because improved safety leads to compliance as a routine, but it also leads to efficient working and our ability to apply that learning back. And by applying the learning back, we can more easily identify work conflicts, we can reduce the application time, the amount of time that we're spent trying to carry out risk assessment, and we can automate things so that everybody knows what's going on in an easier way. And that gives us more time to actually do the work because we get a faster approvals process. And that's really the key to gaining savings through safety. So the way that we look at it is that we generate a system that is easy to understand and easy to use, and that has a common safety vocabulary that's language independent. So everybody everywhere can understand it. And the reason I say that is because we have to do things more intelligently, because that will help us to work more safely and to truly learn the lessons from the past. Because improved safety will lead to higher efficiency and profitability. And not only that, it leads to better performance, less loss, and lower risk. If I take a simple example, and I say, well, if we can get a 10-minute saving in every job we do, and I'll take an example of 5,000 permits in a year, which is in the region of 10 to 20 permits per week, depending on the site working, so fairly normal. And I'll assume a 12-hour shift pattern. If you multiply that out, that's almost 70 man-days of savings just from a tiny 10-minute saving by doing things more efficiently. Forget the savings that we get by not having the accident in the first place, by not having the fines, by not having the environmental penalties. A really simple one is just that 10-minute saving. And the way that we do that is by taking all of the processes that are involved in the systems that we operate and aligning them in the best possible way so that we move through the system in a safe manner. And that leads to some really big savings, typically 10% savings on turnarounds. An example of one of our clients using the RAP system, they're saving $1.1 million per year. They did an assessment to work out what they were saving based on all of the incidents, accidents, lost time, fines, the whole lot. And really, we're looking for a decrease in incidents, and you should be looking for a decrease in incidents of at least 75%. And we see that on a regular basis when these things are employed correctly. And there are some really big numbers at that point. And the reason there are some big numbers at that point is because intelligent safety linked together with people who are empowered, able to, and understanding the work and how to work safely leads to people being able to work smarter and safer. So it's really important that what we look to do is to get everyone involved in safety, and the RAP4 system is designed to help do that.